Do you know that a woman once triggered a chain of events that led to one of Benin's greatest wars? Well, here's the story, a story of love, betrayal, pride, and revenge. A story that shook the mighty Benin Kingdom to its core. And in the end, it proved something powerful, that in Benin, women were never just spectators. They were forces. During the reign of Oba Esigie, around 1504, there lived a powerful and respected chief. His name was Chief Oliha. But for all his power, he had one weakness, a dangerous one. His wife. Her name was Imaguero. Stop! Right there! The shout echoed across the palace courtyard as all eyes turned. A heated argument had just broken out among the chiefs, and right in the middle of it stood a man smiling like he had already won. That man was Chief Oliha. And at that very moment, he had no idea that his words were about to set off a chain of events that would shake the entire Benin Kingdom. He stood tall, chest out, coral beads resting proudly on his neck, his voice loud enough to silence the others. My wife is not like yours, he declared boldly. Imaguero is loyal. She is pure. She is beyond temptation. A few chiefs chuckled under their breath. One of them leaned closer, eyes narrowing slightly. Beyond temptation? He asked. Or simply fortunate enough not to have been tested? Oliha laughed, dismissive, almost mocking. No man in this kingdom, he said firmly, can make my wife fall. The courtyard grew quiet, not because they believed him, but because of who was listening. Seated quietly, observing everything without interruption, was the king himself, Oba Esigie. His face did not change, but something behind his eyes did. It wasn't anger, it was interest, and something darker. That night, while the palace slept, the king remained awake. Inside a dimly lit chamber, he sat with a few trusted members of his court. The air was tense, heavy with unspoken intent. He speaks too much, one man muttered. The king raised a hand, silencing him. Every man has pride, the king said slowly. But pride must be tested. He leaned forward slightly. And every human has a weakness. The room went still. Find hers. Days passed quietly, but behind the silence, investigations moved like shadows. Servants whispered. Observers watched. Patterns formed. And then, the answer came. Imaguero. She was everything Oliha had said. Graceful, admired, composed. But she had a weakness. Coral beads. Ego. Not just admiration. Desire. She loved them deeply. The shine, the status, the beauty. They spoke to something inside her she could not easily control. When the king heard this, a faint smile crossed his face. Good, he said. But what he did next shocked even those closest to him. He did not send a prince. He did not send a nobleman. Instead, he summoned a man few people ever noticed, who made an elderly porter. Frail, bent, his body weakened by time, his presence almost invisible in the grand palace. When Huke stood before the king, he kept his eyes low. My king, he said softly. The king studied him for a moment, then handed him a small bundle. Inside it were coral beads and agate stones. Beautiful, valuable, irresistible. Huke's hands trembled slightly. My king, what do you want me to do with these? The king's voice was calm, but firm. You will take them to Imaguero. Huke hesitated. Me? He asked, confusion clear in his voice. But I am exactly what I need. The king cut in. The room fell silent. No one will suspect you. The king continued. No one will see you as a threat. Huke swallowed hard. And if I fail? The king's gaze hardened. You won't. There was no room for argument. No escape. Huke bowed his head. And just like that, the trap was set. The next day, under the soft glow of afternoon light, Uke made his way toward Imaguero's compound. His steps were slow, uneven, but his mission was clear. And somewhere far away, in the comfort of his pride, Chief Oliha continued to boast, completely unaware that his world was already beginning to crack. When Uke arrived at Imaguero's compound, he paused for a moment, adjusting the small bundle in his hands. His heart pounded harder than he expected. This was not just an errand, it was a test, one that could change lives. A maidservant noticed him first. "What do you want here?" she asked, eyeing him cautiously. "I bring something for your mistress," Uke replied gently. Moments later, Imaguero stepped out. She moved with quiet elegance, her posture straight, her expression calm. But the moment her eyes fell on the coral beads in Uke's hands, something shifted. Just for a second, but it was enough. "Where did you get those?" she asked, stepping closer. Uke lowered his gaze respectfully. "They are meant for someone worthy," he said. She hesitated. "I cannot accept gifts from strangers." Uke nodded, as if he expected that. "I understand," he said softly, "but I will return." And he did, again and again. Each visit, the beads became more beautiful, more tempting, more impossible to ignore. At first, Imaguero resisted. She reminded herself of who she was, of her husband's pride, of her own reputation. But temptation, it's patient. It does not rush. It lingers. It whispers. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the compound grew quiet, Uke returned once more. This time, the beads shimmered in a way she had never seen before. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, then stopped. "I should not," she whispered. Uke said nothing. He simply waited, and in that silence, her resolve broke. She took them. That single moment changed everything. What followed was not immediate, but inevitable. Conversations became longer. Visits became more private. Boundaries blurred. Until one night, the line was crossed completely. And just like that, the untouchable woman had fallen. Back at the palace, the king waited, patiently. He did not rush to expose the truth. He wanted the moment to be perfect. And it came sooner than expected. Once again, the chiefs gathered in the courtyard. Laughter filled the air. Palm wine flowed freely. And as always, Chief Oliha found his moment. "My wife, enough." The king's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Silence fell instantly. Oliha blinked, surprised. "My king." The king gestured. "Bring him." Confusion spread across the gathering as Uke was led forward. Some chiefs frowned. Others looked amused. "What is this?" Oliha asked, forcing a smile. The king leaned back slightly. "Let's hear a story," he said calmly. Then he turned to Uke. "Speak." Uke hesitated briefly, then began. At first the words came slowly, but soon they flowed. Every visit, every gift, every moment, every detail. The courtyard shifted from confusion to shock. Gasps echoed. Murmurs spread. Some chiefs covered their mouths. Others laughed openly. Oliha stood frozen. "No," he whispered, but Uke continued. There was no stopping it. When he finished, the silence was louder than any noise before it. Oliha's face had lost all color. His pride shattered in front of everyone. One chief leaned toward another, whispering, just loud enough to be heard. "So this is the untouchable woman." Laughter followed. Oliha turned slowly, his eyes burning, not just with anger, but humiliation. Without a word, he walked away, step by step, each one heavier than the last. And in that moment, something inside him changed, something dangerous. When Chief Oliha reached his home, the night felt unusually quiet. The air itself seemed to carry the weight of what had happened. Imaguero saw him from a distance and rushed forward, her face filled with concern. "My husband." He didn't respond. Instead, he walked past her, his expression cold, unreadable. "Oliha," she called again, her voice trembling slightly. Still, no answer. Then suddenly, he stopped. Slowly he turned to face her. In his hands was a small pot. He dropped it in front of her. The sound echoed. Inside it, a blade. And poison. Imaguero froze. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Oliha's eyes locked onto hers. "Choose." Her breath caught. "Choose," she repeated. "You have already chosen," he said quietly. "Now choose how it ends." Tears filled her eyes. "I made a mistake," she said desperately. "Please, forgive me." But forgiveness was no longer within him. The humiliation had cut too deep. "You were my pride," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "And you destroyed it." She fell to her knees. "I am still yours." "No," he snapped. Silence followed. Heavy, final. Moments later, it was over. Imaguero was gone. And with her, the last piece of Oliha's restraint disappeared. Grief turned into anger. Anger turned into vengeance. He wanted the king to feel what he felt, but he knew he could not confront him directly. So he chose a different path, a more dangerous one. He called for his most trusted servant. "Oba Esigie," he said, his voice low and controlled. "There is something you must do." Days later, whispers began to spread. But these whispers were not ordinary. They carried lies, carefully crafted lies. To the Ata of Idia, a message arrived. "The Oba of Benin is preparing to attack you." And to the Oba, another message came. "The Ata is gathering forces to strike Benin." Suspicion grew, tension built, and soon words turned into action. War began. The clash between Benin and Idia was fierce. Warriors fought with everything they had. Dust filled the air. Cries echoed across the battlefield. At one point, it seemed like Benin might fall. Fear spread. Doubt crept in, until a new force emerged. A woman, Queen Idia. She stepped forward, not as a spectator, but as a leader. Her presence alone shifted the energy. "We do not lose," she said firmly. Strategies changed. Deception was introduced. Movements became calculated. Under her guidance, the tide turned. Slowly, then decisively. Benin rose, and Idia fell. Victory was secured. But the cost could never be forgotten, because at the center of it all was a simple truth. This war began because of pride. It grew because of betrayal, and it was shaped by women, one who triggered it, and one who ended it. And even now, the story remains a reminder that no matter how powerful a man becomes, one moment of arrogance can undo everything. If this story kept you watching till the end, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Niger Story Vault TV, and share it with others who need to hear these powerful African histories. And tell us in the comments, was Chief Oliha justified, or did he go too far?